Welcome, YouTube. We have a new set to look at. This time we get to look at the top 10 cards from Pokemon Go. This comes out on the 1st of July here well, internationally. So North America, Europe, etc. And came out about a week ago now in Japan as of recording this. So this is a fairly small set. It's our mini set for July. So there aren't as many cards as normal. So you'll see some cards that probably wouldn't have made a top 10 list in a main set, but are still kind of worth highlighting for a small set like this one. With that said, let's get started. Of course, by looking at a little bit of the art from this set. A lot of the art in this set I didn't care for. It's very CG, very plasticky, which goes with the Pokemon Go theme, but ultimately doesn't feel great on cards. It just kind of feels like, what if we took 5-Van and made it look objectively worse? That's kind of how it feels, but oh well. I said there are some cards worth looking at, and I'm only going to cover a couple of them, obviously, but like this Blastoise, for example, by NC Empire. They've been around for a little while in TCG, but I like the way they draw their lines and just the shading and stuff they have in this particular picture. Blastoise, not my favorite of the Kanto starters. I'd say second favorite of the fully evolved ones, at least. First, of course, being Venusaur. But I do like this art probably the most of the Kanto starters. Speaking of Kanto starters, we have Sao having some artwork for both Bulbasaur and for Squirtle. They did not do the art for Charmander, which is a little interesting, but this art is still, the art for both cards here is just gorgeous. It's almost like a, not quite, I mean, it's like a really, it's almost like color pencil drawing, but obviously it's not. Oh, I like the way it looks. It's beautiful. There is good art in this, guys. And some of it's on the comments, which is nice to see. With that, I'm going back. With that said, we are going to jump into the honorable mentions for this set. These are cards that did not quite make the top 10, but they're at least interesting. There's something worth knowing about, maybe for a meme deck or for something in the future. Maybe some card will come out that might make them way better than they are right now. But at the moment, they're just worth being aware of. The first one of these is a Alolan Raticate. I should say, really, it's only a Alolan Raticate because the other card is an honorable mention for a different reason. That said, Alolan Raticate has Chase Up for single Darkness Energy. It says, search your deck for a card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So this is just to get a card. Probably not the attack you're going to be using most of the time, but if you have to, you have to. And then the other attack is Super Fang. Put damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon until its remaining HP is 10. So this is a Super Fang attack we've seen before on Raticate Break and on a Raticate from back in Black and White, I think. That era. It's been a while for that one at least. But we have seen Raticate with these attacks before. Or with this attack rather before. So typically the way you're going to do it is you're going to be hitting your opponent's Pokemon with some sort of special condition. Typically it's poison, but it could be burn. Something that guarantees they're going to take a tick of damage between turns. Or I should say during Pokemon checkup. So that way that 10 HP suddenly becomes 0, and you immediately take the prize cards away from them for whatever it is you happen to knock out. So if you're smacking them with Super Fang and you hit them down to 10, let's say you're hitting a Mew VMAX, so you bring Mew VMAX down to 10 HP, and for whatever reason that Mew VMAX does not have Fusion Strike Energy attached to it and is suddenly affected by a poison from the Poisonous Puddle Garbodor. Poison takes that 10 damage and is knocked out. Pretty interesting, pretty good. Obviously, stuff like Fusion Strike Energy does kind of make it a little bit harder to pull that off. And then it is a stage 1, also something to be aware of. There is a card, it's a Shedinja, I believe, that has the exact same attack as this, by a different name, of course. And it's a basic Pokemon, one that you can't put directly into play, but it is one that you could discard and use to use this attack on a Pokemon we'll talk about later in the top 10. So that's also worth being aware of. However, this Raticate does have the advantage of being able to, one, slip into a box-style deck like Zoroark, because as a stage 1, it's able to just kind of be part of that deck if it needs to be. and 2, it's dark typed, right? Which means it can take advantage of Dark Patch to help power itself up. So if you use a Dark Patch and a Double Turbo, or a Dark Patch and Twin Energy, you're immediately powered up. Whereas something like a Ditto would require 2 attachments, or something like Gardenia's Vitality. And if you're running Gardenia's Vitality to attach your energy, you're not drawing perhaps as much as you might want to be. That's definitely something to be aware of. But Alone Eradicate is definitely interesting, and if the 3 prizes become a huge problem, maybe it'll help be part of the solution. I kind of doubt it, but maybe. The other honorable mention, like I said, different reason this time, but this is a reprint. We knew it was coming. We've actually seen an F regulation mark rare candy already. Start Deck Run 100 had one in Japan. However, we, for whatever reason, have not seen those cards internationally yet. It was like, I think something like 10 different cards that Japan got F regulation mark versions of that we haven't seen. They're not new art, which is kind of interesting, but they are refreshing legality. In this case, it is new art and refreshed legality. So we knew it was being refreshed, but now we actually have new art for it too. So, you know what Rare Candy does? Basically, it allows you to jump over the stage 2 and jump, or over the stage 1 and jump straight into stage 2. So if you have a Charmander, you need to get into a Charizard. Jump from that Charmander straight to a Charizard after it has waited a turn. So no needing to go Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard. You just go straight through the fully evolved Pokemon, which that extra turn can really save you some time when you're desperately trying to make sure that your stage 2 deck is actually out and attacking when it needs to be. All right, now for the top 10. Magikarp. Magikarp's an interesting one. I say this is a meme. It may be a fun meme, and it may even be an effective meme at some point, but I think it's a meme, at least right off the bat. So for a single colorless energy, lively grouping, search your deck for any number of Magikarp, reveal them and put them into your hand, then shuffle your deck. So maybe this is something you do right off the bat. You start a Magikarp, you wait for it to get knocked out, but in the process you get 3 more of them into your hand and use them as discard fodder for something like Ultra Ball or Quick Ball the next turn. Perfectly fine. Good. You want them as discard fodder because for double colorless, Raging Fin, 10 plus damage. This attack does 30 more damage for each Magikarp and each Gyarados in your discard pile. So that means maximum, because you can have 8 of them total, right? And I'm saying 8 because you can attack using Ditto, but we'll look at Ditto later. That's 3 times 8. Gives me 240 damage plus the base, so 250. Add another 30 for choice belt, and another 30 if you have Halucha. So you can get to 310. You're going to probably have to play like Hisuian Heavy Balls and Peonias and all the fancy things to get out all of your Magikarps and all of your Gyaradoses and get them all out in play. But you can hit it, and you can get there. The big question is how long is it going to take you to get there before it becomes a problem? Now, maybe you can pull it off. Maybe the prize trade will be in your favor, but if you're going at something like Regigigas or Malamar or even Dark Toolbox, I think you're going to struggle because they're going to outspeed you and they're going to start sweeping through you before you get yourself set up, and they might even start getting rid of your resources like your energies before you're quite ready to be rid of them. But as I was saying earlier, this again, I think this is a meme, or at least it'll start out as one. But it's one of those decks that might sneak into results here and there just for the lulz. Somebody might try it. Maybe not at a regionals, but like on one of the Limitless online tournament, they'll jump in, they'll get like 5th place or something, and everybody will lose their mind over it, and it'll be awesome. It's going to be a fun card, fun deck either way. Certainly something to play with your kids with if you have kids at home that like Magikarp or just like Pokemon in general. Number 9. No, bro. For a single colorless energy, Dizzy Tackle. This does 20 damage. Both active Pokemon are now asleep. And then for double colorless, Last Minute Inspiration. You can only use this attack if your opponent has exactly 1 prize card remaining. Take 2 prize cards. Yeah, that's what it says. It is a very interesting attack, and I think this is just an immediate include in Zoroark Toolbox decks. So Zoroark, if you aren't familiar with it, is from Evolving Skies. It has an ability called Phantom Transformation that allows you to basically shift it into any stage 1 Pokemon in your discard pile, and you discard the Zorua and Zoroark in the process. It's pretty cool. So late game, maybe this is how you take the last two prize cards. Maybe you're struggling to get there and your opponent only has one left. You throw this out, slap a double turbo on there, and just take the last two prize cards with last minute inspiration. It's an interesting card. Is it going to be best card in the format, best deck in the format by itself? No. But it's certainly worth looking at and certainly worth knowing about, especially because of its potential in Zoroark. I like the card. Blastoise. Ability, Vitality Spring. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for up to 6 energy cards and attach them to your Pokemon in any way you like. Then shuffle your deck. If you use this ability, your turn ends. Now, you're thinking, 6 energy cards, okay, cool. I'll get 6 water energy, throw them around all over the place, and be happy about it. Now, the cool thing about this, or one of the cool things about it at least, it doesn't specify basic energy. So, yes, this is a stage 2, but it may still end up being worth setting up. Perhaps not in standard format. Maybe it is too much for standard still, but in expanded at least, I could see this being pretty interesting. You may even get Archie's band, actually. It's very strong. Because that's 6 of any energy. That could be, let's say that's 4 double colors and a couple of double turbos, or 4 speed lightnings, or just 4 basic or 6 basic energy. Like, this is a stage 2 super turbocharged Arceus V. It's very interesting. And yes, it does end your turn, but the good thing about something like this is we also have Diancie from Astral Radiance. So if you do have this Blastoise out and the Pokemon that you're throwing all the energy on, or a couple Pokemon you're throwing energy on, if they are a basic Pokemon and you have Diancie in the active, and especially if you have a second Diancie on the bench, they're safe. that energy is not going anywhere unless they have Cross Switcher, and even that's quite unlikely for most decks. A lot of them just straight up won't have it, or even if they do have, even if they are running it, the chances of them having it when they need it aren't as good as they would need to guarantee that all that energy goes away. So I like Vitality Spring. It's pretty strong. And then it does have an attack too. Hydro Pump, 90 plus damage. This attack does 30 more damage for each water energy attached to this Pokemon. So maybe that 6 energy goes to a Blastoise because you're confident your opponent can't knock it out. Very bold choice, but let's say you do it. That's 6 damage, or 6 to 180, 270, right? That's actually pretty decent. 300 with Choice Belt. I like. At number 7, Radiant Charizard. This is ability called Excited Heart. This Pokemon's attacks cost colorless energy less for each prize card your opponent has taken. Then has a crazy high attack cost in Fire Quadruple Colorless, Combustion Blast, 250 damage. During your next turn, this Pokemon can't use Combustion Blast. So, this is just like Zacian in that you can retreat to the bench, bring it back, and attack again if you need to. If your opponent's taking 4 prize cards, you're attaching the single fire energy to this and mowing down whatever's in front of them, whatever in front of Radiant Charizard, especially if you have a Choice Belt attached to this. You're going to be doing 280. That takes down even a Palkia, unless they have a big charm, of course, but that's quite a bit of damage. You can't obviously play this with Radiant Hawlucha because Radiant Charizard would be your Radiant Pokemon in the deck. But that's still, that 280 damage potential with the belt is pretty freaking good. Definitely worth being aware of as a competition to Heatran. So Heatran, really good early game. Charizard, really good as a finisher. It's kind of like a fire type Zapdos, except it's a single prizer. So it's pretty strong. I like it. Definitely like it. Mewtwo Vstar. Now this one I'm a little more conflicted over, but we'll talk about it first, about what it does, and then we'll talk about why I'm a little conflicted over it. So for Psychic Colorless, it has Psypurge. Psypurge does 90 times damage. Discard up to 3 psychic energy from your Pokemon. This attack does 90 damage for each card you discarded in this way. And then it has a V-Star power for Psychic Colorless Star Raid. This attack does 120 damage to each of your opponent's Pokemon V. This damage is not affected by weakness or by resistance. And of course, you cannot use more than 1 V-Star power in a game. Okay, so your Psypurge, let's see, you throw 3 psychic energy out. That's 270 plus choice belt 300. Pretty easy, not that hard to set up. You can play it with Shadow Rider. You can play it with Clefairy once that comes out in Lost Origin. Here's the problem. To me, this feels a heck of a lot like Reshiram and Zekrom from, I believe it was Cosmic Eclipse, where the card has potential, but it feels, and actually Rayquaza VMAX is also, this is also true for Rayquaza VMAX. They have potential, but they haven't seemed to be able to exercise any of that potential. And part of the problem I feel for Mewtwo Vstar is that it is a psychic type Pokemon that is weak to dark in a format where everything wants to take down Mew and is running dark packages left, right, and center. Now, not everything is running dark, it's true, but enough things are running dark packages that this could be a huge threat for Mewtwo. And then on top of it, getting the 2 energy on Mewtwo, and then ensuring there's at least one other energy in play for that discard so that you can do the 270, it feels kind of icky. Now, Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX does accelerate energy, but then now you have a 3 prize card liability on your in your field in your play that is also weak to dark, which also feels really bad. So then you're like, okay, well then we can do the Clefairies, but then the Clefairies, are they more than a meme? I feel like probably, honestly. I don't want them to be. I would love them to be great, but I kind of feel like they're going to be, because you're gonna need to be switching those Clefairies like crazy to get enough energy in play early on for them to be worth it. So then you could, okay, so maybe the Clefairy is not the option. Maybe you go to Arceus. Okay, so you play Arceus instead. You get the energy and play with Arceus. But then more than likely you're just basically playing Arceus, or a worse version of Arceus and Inteleon, right? Because now you're trying to make Mewtwo work. I mean, you're doing slightly more damage than Arceus would, sure, but is it worth all that setup early on to hurt the consistency of Arceus in the first place? The question, or the answer might be maybe. Maybe might even be yes, but I don't know. Maybe I just have. Maybe I'm just still bothered by the whole Reshiram and Zekrom thing. To me, this card reeks of that, and I don't want it to be the case, but it does feel like it might be. Now that I've said all that, somebody's going to break it. Somebody's going to make sure to prove me wrong. I look forward to being wrong. At number 5, Snorlax. Ability, block. Ah, that sounds familiar to some people, especially if you play Expanded. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent's active Pokemon retreat. And then for 4 colorless energy, collapse 150. This Pokemon's now asleep. So block is an ability on, I believe it's from Plasma Blast, from the Plasma sets, Snorlax. Currently in expanded format. This is not a direct reprint, but it is a very similar card with the exact same ability, a different attack though. This will see play. Guaranteed this will see play. It will see play most likely in some sort of controlling archetype, similar to what we're seeing with Miltank right now. It's strong. That ability is crazy good. If you're playing some energy disruption, some other disruption effects, this basically makes it so that your opponent cannot get what they need into the active spot when they need it into the active spot, and shuts them down and makes them so they cannot execute their strategy, which is pretty great. Now, is this going into every deck? Heck no. Is it good in the right deck? Is it good on its own, or mostly on its own with some other stall tools? Yeah. Am I gonna try playing it? You bet. I love stall. Am I the best stall player in the world? No. But do I love stall? Yes, I do. And so I'm absolutely going to be trying out Snorlax and seeing if I can make it either work, or at least work enough that I can play it casually. Because I love me some stall, and Snorlax seems right up my alley. At number 4, Pokestop. Pokestop says, once during each player's turn, that player may discard 3 cards from the top of their deck. If a player discarded any item cards in this way, they put those item cards into their hand. So this is a stadium card, of course, in case it wasn't obvious. Basically, this is a way to mill the top 3 cards of your deck. and then get some item cards to help mill further. Decks like Mad Party may want to see this. Maybe it's a way for them to get additional Pokemon in the discard pile. This could also maybe be used as a way to filter out some item cards from Mew. Maybe it runs a one of, maybe not, but it does seem like a potential include once we've hit rotation for Mew. But at the very least, any turbo deck may want this simply because it helps them get further into their deck. Now, yes, there is the risk that you discard Pokemon that you need or energy cards that you need. But you're going turbo, you're trying to get through, trying to find your stuff as fast as possible. So maybe you're hitting energy lottos, maybe you're hitting quick balls, level balls, whatever that is. And Pokestop can help you do that. It can help you thin out your deck even faster. It's an interesting card. It's definitely a card that I expect to see some play. I want to try Mad Party with Pokestop. I talked about Ditto a little bit before. It's still on this list, I promise. I think that I want to try Mad Party with that Ditto also. So between the two cards, maybe Mad Party starts to see a couple wins here and there. But we'll see. It is Mad Party after all. At number 3, Radiant Blastoise. Ability, Pump Shot. You must discard a water energy card from your hand in order to use this ability. Once during your turn, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So this is a slightly worse version of Inteleon's quick shooting ability. So it has to be specifically a water energy that gets discarded. So Inteleon, you just get to do it because it's a stage 2 basically. With this, you have to discard a water energy. And in this case, it can only be on the bench. Still fairly good. That can help finish off stuff that gets maybe bosses order something fresh to the active, finish something off with Pump Shot or get something ready with Pump Shot. So it's good. It's definitely something good if you're trying to spread damage or if you're trying to finish something off. Maybe you don't have the room for the Inteleon, but you need a couple extra damage and you're running a water deck anyway. Maybe Blastoise is your guy. And then, of course, there's also the Torrential Cannon. So for 2 water and a colorless, 170 damage. During your next turn, this Pokemon cannot use Torrential Cannon. And a lot of that Zacian style effect where you can't do it unless you switch out and do some of that magic. But definitely an interesting attack. Decent damage, 200 for 3 energy. If you're playing this in Palkia, although probably you should just run Greninja. But if you are running this in Palkia, that's fairly easy to power up with the ability on Palkia, the Vstar. So, a decent option if you need it for switching into a single prize or knocking something out. And the ability is not bad. It's worth thinking about. Now, yes, like I mentioned already, Greninja does exist, so every Radiant Pokemon that you consider playing has to be compared to Greninja. Greninja is the gold standard, or platinum standard, or diamond standard, whatever standard you want to call it. Greninja is absolutely the best for a lot of decks, but it may not be the best for every deck, so it's still worth considering other Radiant Pokemon. And Radiant Blastoise may be the one that your deck needs more than Radiant Greninja. So, again, it's good. This can be the great math finisher, so worth looking at. At number 2, I've mentioned it now several times, is this freaking Ditto with the ability Sudden Transformation. This Pokemon can use the attacks of any basic Pokemon in your discard pile except for Pokemon with a rule box. So Pokemon V, Pokemon GX, all those have rule boxes. You still need the necessary energy to use each attack. So this ability means you can go through and you can say, hey, that Bunnelby that I have in my discard pile, I would like to copy its Mad Party attack. Okay, cool. Just throw the double colorless energy onto Ditto and suddenly you have an extra Mad Party attacker. Ditto is now a Mad Partier. Hey, that's pretty nifty. That means all of your Mad Partiers, all 16 of them, can be in your discard pile to ramp your damage all the way up to 320 before the choice belt to get you to 350. Now, if you're nuking your deck with something like Pokestop or Ultra Ball or Quick Ball or all these discarding cards like Professor's Research and Alistair, there's a very good chance that you have a lot of Mad Partiers in the discard pile. And that seems pretty decent. Ditto can also be used, as I mentioned earlier, to copy the ability, or the attack rather, of Shedinja from Voltage, that has that same style of attack as Alolan Raticate, so that you can put your opponent's active Pokemon down to 10 HP and slap them with something like Poison, KO them. Ditto is a very interesting card. I'm very glad there's a card like this right now. I've been wanting something like this for a while. There's also kind of like a toolboxy style. I've seen toolboxy style of deck I've seen played with Ditto in Japan, and it has some milling cards. The Misfortune Sisters we don't quite have here yet, but between that and a Jinx that we also don't have yet, I think there is a good chance that this Ditto will see not just a little bit of play, but quite a bit of play as at least the single prizer decks as an extra option for various attackers, for single prizer basic attackers. I like it. I just thought of another thing too. This could be like an extra Moltres if you're playing a fire deck. It's just oh yeah. Okay, so just to clarify too, no rule boxes. That does include Radiant Pokemon, so you can't be like, oh, I'm just gonna make, uh, you know, Radiant Heatran crazy good because I can throw some damage on Ditto and copy it. No, because Radiant Heatran does have a rule box, so that will not work. Radiant Pokemon do have a rule box, but there are a lot of other good options. Like I mentioned earlier, Mad Party I think is one of the more obvious places for this. That toolbox style with the Jinx, and I think it's more Pico or more Peko, and yeah, Jinx and more Peko. There's somebody else, but that general toolbox style deck where you can mill out your opponent or stall them out, and run them out of resources could be very very good for Ditto, and maybe healthy for the game in general right now. Um, alternate alternate win condition style decks haven't been super great for a while. Not since like the Ultra Prism on rotation with Pidgeotto control. Since it has been a minute since they've been great. Ultra Prism on or Team Up on? I can't remember anymore. It's been so long. But yeah, it's good. I like it. It's definitely one of my favorite cards in the set. If I mean, it made number 2, so obviously it's one of my favorite cards in the set. But I think it's going to see play, and I think it's going to see a fairly decent amount of play in single prize archetypes. And finally, at number 1, Radiant Venusaur. You kind of expected it. It's very very good. It's gonna see play basically everywhere Greninja doesn't, at least for a little while. So ability Sunny Bloom once at the end of your turn after your attack. Read that as after your attack phase. You may use this ability, draw cards until you have 4 cards in your hand. So no matter what, if let's say you have no cards in your hand at the end of your turn, you draw and you get an instant 4. That's pretty decent. That ability is very, very good. And then, of course, there is still an attack there for Grass, Colorless, Pollen Hazard. 90 damage. Your opponent's active Pokemon is now burned, confused, and poisoned. So if you're running this in a Gardenia deck, you can be using Gardenia's Vigor to throw a couple of Grass Energy onto Radiant Venusaur, manual attachment, and then stall them out with some Confusion. It's not bad. If you're desperate, it's not bad. But that ability is really what you're going to be running this for. So there are some decks, especially, again, alternate win condition decks, we just talked about stuff like Stall, Control, and Mill, that may not necessarily be wanting to discard energy, or may not even either run it or not run enough to warrant running Greninja. Greninja obviously has you discarding energy, so if you're only running like 2 capture energy, it's not remotely worth it to run Greninja because you're not going to ever get any use out of it. But something like this Radiant Venusaur would be great for something like that if you don't have another Radiant Pokemon that you'd rather use. This still gets you the option to draw cards at the end of your turn, making sure that you don't brick, or if you especially if you can thin your hand, you're less reliant on your top deck. Now, Radiant Venusaur still does have to compete with Greninja. So there is that to keep in mind. So in decks, especially that have large hand sizes, decks that are something like Shadow Rider, where they're just draw, 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 where Shadow Rider isn't seeing a ton of luck right now, but like that deck, right? Maybe Radiant Venusaur isn't the best choice, but there are definitely decks that are going to want it. I know there is an Arcanine, Hisuian Arcanine archetype. This should be coming out in Lost Origin. It's kind of a reimagining or a refresh version of the Granbull from Lost Thunder. Basically, it says if you have no cards in your hand, you do a bunch of extra damage. So it's like 30 plus 130 if you have no cards in your hand. So you can do a decent amount of damage. It's a fighting type, so you can absolutely mow over every Arceus in play. Um, that maybe that deck wants this because it can, after if it desperately needs to draw some cards in the next turn to make sure that it can get the next attack off. Maybe that's the way to do it, is to draw some cards with Radiant Venusaur after you've attacked, after you've already done your KO for the damage. It's a good option. With that said, that is the last of the cards we're looking at here for Pokemon Go. As always, check out the highlights on justinbasil.com. So if you click on the what's next, you'll see all the new stuff coming out, including Pokemon Go. You can get the highlights from the set, look at the visual set list, look at the list. All that's there. And as always, guys, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.